Hey guys, what's up and welcome to Z Reviews Tech. This is going to be the full camera review of the Cubot Power smartphone, so check it out. So the pictures here are actually quite big. The pictures are around 6 megabytes, which is definitely not small for a smartphone camera, but the upside of huge pictures, well in this case at least for the Cubot Power, is that the quality on these photos are insanely good. Like I'm talking like just look at these pictures. They look so good. There's so much detail. The amount of detail is just so much that everything's just crystal clear, especially when you're taking macro shots. The color saturation here is superb. I will say that the color saturation here is a tiny bit oversaturated from like real life, but I kind of like it that way, and I don't think many people will find fault with that because it's not super oversaturated, but it's a tiny bit. But I think it's enough that regular people will be like, yeah, this is a really good camera. So yeah, I'm super impressed with the macro shots. They look super good. They're just everything about the photo is good. Well, actually not quite. I'll say one more good thing about the photos and then I'll move on to the bad. So the last thing is that the dynamic range in these photos is actually pretty good. So you look at the dark and bright areas. The dark and bright areas, they're not too dark and not too bright, so you do get a lot of detail in both, shadows, midtones, and highlights. So really no problem there. But I want you guys to focus actually on the background. So look at this photo. It's the flower is in focus, and I'm gonna zoom in on the background, and you'll see that the when you're zooming in on the background, you'll see that the bokeh in the background is a little bit grainy. So that's a weakness. You don't really notice it because most of the time when you're looking at a photo like this, you're really focusing on the foreground. And the foreground, the photos are good. The foreground image itself is clear. It looks nice. Color saturation is good. But the background, there's always a little bit of grain in the background where there's bokeh. So there's that to be aware of. But you know what? Overall, the photos here are insane. Like, to be honest, the photo quality here, at least in the good photos, they're on par, if not a little bit better than the Xiaomi Redmi 5 Plus, which is absolutely insane. So moving on to a little bit more of the good stuff, the landscape shots here are not bad either. There's actually quite a bit of detail in the landscape shots, or at least the shots that are not considered to be close-up or macro shots. You see quite a bit of color saturation. Like, the detail is not as good obviously as the macro shot, but it's still good. You still do get a good amount of detail, definitely more than enough that even looking at it on a 32-inch screen, it's still there's still a decent amount of detail. Color saturation is still good, and there's also decent dynamic range. Also, when you turn on HDR, it definitely makes your photos better. I will say that sometimes HDR does blow out your photo a little bit. So there are times where you will not want to put on HDR unless it's like a super dark / bright photo where you really want to contrast it. And obviously when you take an HDR, the HDR mode here is not super fast either. So that is one downside. So if you do take HDR, you have to keep your phone very still, or you're going to start seeing after images. Just look at this photo of my dog. You'll see that the non-HDR photo is fine, and the HDR photo, you'll see that my dog has like an after image there also. Now, obviously this camera here is good, but it's not all fun and games. And I will say that the biggest problem I have with this camera is that the focusing is not fast. So if I'm just like, let's say I pull out my camera and I'm just taking a photo without focusing, most of the time the photos are not focused properly on the object. You have to give it like half a second for the phone to actually figure out and say, okay, I'm going to focus on the dog, and bam, it takes a good photo. So that is one issue. The focus is not very fast, and that is a software issue, not a hardware issue, because I do see times where it does focus properly. It just doesn't do it all the time. So they really have to fix the software and make sure that it focuses properly. But of course, if you just tap on the screen and focus on the thing, then your photos come out really good. But I will say that if you do take photos of something and it's not focused, you do get blurry shots. Sometimes you get blown out dynamic range. Like this photo, it could be too bright, it could be too dark, but then you take another photo and it's absolutely amazing, lots and lots of detail, absolutely no problem. Moving on to the low light. The low light here, actually, you know what? Let's not even talk about low light. Let's talk about medium light. So medium light, like in the house, you get some natural sunlight coming in. It's pretty bad in that case also. You do get quite a bit of grain and ugliness, and it's really just not a great photo. And even color saturation and color and like dynamic range, they all go way down when you start having less light in the photo. Medium light, and you're looking at photos that look pretty bad. So that's one area where Chinese phones still have not figured out how to solve yet. But their daylight photos are absolutely superb, and I don't know what Cubot is doing right, but the photos here, you can take insanely good photos, and it's not that hard either. You just got to know the quirks. Oh yeah, so moving on to the front-facing camera, it's I would say it's average at best. The camera quality is decent. Well, decent for a front-facing camera, but for a back-facing camera, it's pretty bad. And of course, the video quality in the front-facing camera, you did see that at the very beginning of the video. So there's that you can compare. It's average, really nothing to write home about. Let's move on to the video quality. The video quality here maxes out at 1080p, and the video detail is actually decent. Again, you do get that focusing issue where if you don't focus on the right thing, you get a blurred out video. But if you do focus on the right thing, then your video is okay. The detail here is decent. The color saturation is decent, but the one problem I have with this, again, it's software, is it compensates way too fast. So you start moving around the phone, and you'll start seeing the camera start compensating for dark and bright areas. I mean, the perfect example is my dog. He's got a white fur and black fur, and you see that when the area of focus passes over the white to the black fur, you'll start noticing the color of or the brightness of the entire video shift. And even if I'm moving between like shadows and stuff like that, exactly the same thing. Compensates way too fast. I really do not like it at all. But yeah, so final thoughts. Camera here is insanely good. Like you can take some really good photos. In fact, some of these photos are on par with my Smartest Nut Pro 2, and that is saying something considering the Smartest Nut Pro 2 has a Snapdragon 660 and is billed as like a mid-range / like flagship. So very impressed with what Cubot has been able to achieve with their cameras. I'm not sure if this is something that all Chinese companies are getting better at, in terms of camera quality, but Cubot is definitely doing an amazing job, and props to them. So there are still a couple of issues with this, and mainly that has to do with focus. That it doesn't focus fast enough, and that can be an issue for some people. So yeah, so the camera quality here, if you have any questions, let me know in the comments down below. I will upload my full review that will be coming up very soon. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to hit like and subscribe and hit that little notification button on the side, and I'll see you guys in the next one.